Welcome to Astro Chats. So, a couple weeks back, we talked about neutrinos and how they're sort of like ghost particles because they have basically no mass and they have no charge. So tonight we're going to get into the spooky spirit again with some astro conspiracies and hoaxes. We'll be starting out with our main story, Apollo 11, amazing feat of mankind or biggest scam of the century. I'll let you decide. And then we're going to move on to the supposed destruction of the world in Y2K and again in 2012. I said that we were going to talk about ET and UFO sightings tonight, but there's just so much to talk about for each of those segments that I decided to split this into two parts. So next week I'll be talking about UFOs, astrobiology, and bad physics in movies. Stay tuned. Okay, jumping into debunking the moon conspiracy theories. I'm about to prove the 6 most frequently stated pieces of evidence that the moon landings were faked completely out of the water. So first, they claim that there are no stars in the pictures taken on the surface of the moon. How could they be on the moon without stars in the sky? Well, this is pretty easy to debunk, actually. The stars are just too faint to be seen on the short exposures taken in those photographs. If you went out at night on Earth and took pictures with exposures as long as the astronauts were, you wouldn't see any stars in your picture either. They're just too faint. Alright, second, the radiation in the Van Allen belts would have killed the astronauts had they actually gone to the moon. So this is a good point. The radiation on the way to the moon would be lethal to unprotected astronauts, but NASA knew this and planned the trajectory of the shuttle to avoid the worst of the radiation, and the metal walls of the spacecraft prevented most of the rest of it. All in all, after their trip to and from the moon, the astronauts only accumulated as much radiation as someone at sea level gets over about 3 years, which isn't great, but it's definitely reasonable for space travel. Third, there should have been dust on the lunar lander's feet. It looks like it was just set down like a prop on some set. Well, the lander was set down, it landed. By the time it was meters away from the surface, the engine was shut off, and any dust that was disturbed by the engine propulsion immediately fell back to the surface because there was no atmosphere for the dust to float in. Essentially, the lander landed on top of the dust. Fourth, the flag on the moon looks like it's blowing in the breeze like from air conditioning on a movie set. It kind of does, but that's not because there was air on the moon. The astronauts had to twist and push the flagpole into the moon soil so that it wouldn't fall over, and the residual movement of the pole after the astronauts let go is what gave the fluttering effect to the flag. And because there's no atmosphere to stop the flag from fluttering, it could keep going further. Fifth, the moon is too hot during the day. The astronauts should have been boiled by the heat. Again, NASA realized this and planned for a moon landing right as the 14 Earth days worth of night on the moon was ending and a local morning had just dawned. So it wasn't actually the heat the astronauts had to worry about, but 2 weeks worth of cold. The suits kept them insulated just fine, but one astronaut had a close call during his moon expedition. He found a nice sized rock to take back home and placed it under the lander in shadow. After a while, they prepared to go back to Earth, and he brought the rock inside, and it was then that he realized that he'd have to arrange the rocks that they gathered to keep the spacecraft balanced during flight. He'd already taken off his gloves when he grabbed the rock and realized that it was freezing. He was really lucky not to get frostbite. Alright, sixth and finally, if you look at the pictures taken from the moon's surface, the shadows point in different directions because the astronauts are on a movie set with stage lights. Not quite. The shadows point in what seem like wonky angles because they are at different distances from the camera. It works the same way we see railroad tracks that seem to converge close to the horizon. It's our eyes playing tricks on us. So while there is irrefutable evidence that man has landed on the moon, I find it hard to prove to the skeptics that NASA was the first to land on the moon in 1969. Despite all the photographic proof and physical samples of evidence, there are always going to be people that say, well, yeah, but meh. So essentially, I believe that the Apollo missions were completely real and that they are the greatest achievement of mankind to date. I guess what you choose to believe is up to you. So I still find it astounding that it is the year 2016 and there are still people in this world who honestly believe that the Earth is flat. Like, there were people in the 1600s and before who were like, nah man, that doesn't really make sense. And they hadn't even gone to space and seen the Earth as a sphere. It's actually a common misconception that everyone back in olden times thought the Earth was flat. Heck, back even in like 400 BC, Aristotle and others who studied the stars knew that the Earth had to be round because of a bunch of reasons, like the Earth's shadow on the moon being round and southern constellations rising higher in the sky as you travel more south. But it wasn't just ancient astronomers who realized this. Even sailors knew that the Earth could not be flat because as a ship sails from open water towards you and the shore, you see the sails and the mast before you see the whole body of the ship. If the Earth was flat, you'd be able to see the whole ship at once. Only a curved surface of the Earth could produce the effect that was observed. But people will believe crazy things, like that every computer in the world was going to malfunction and shut down or explode, and that civilization would be destroyed. Most of us college kids were about 4 to 8 years old at the time of 2000, so for those of you who don't remember, people thought that computers that were made in the 1900s were programmed to tell the date in the 1900s. So like 89 meant 1989, 99 meant 1999, you get it. So when the year reached 2000, computers would see 00 and assume that time went back to 1900 instead of 2000, and they'd be so confused that they'd shut off. Like, honestly, this is a really cute idea, almost like it was thought up by a child. Like, some kid was just like, so the computers won't know what to do, and they'll just be like, oh no, and then shut down. Like, that's so cute. So another theory of world catastrophe in the year 2000 was that a special planetary alignment would cause massive earthquakes, winds at 2,000 miles per hour, floods, and other end-of-the-world stuff, as the gravitational interactions of the planets all together would have disastrous consequences on the Earth. But a common misconception about our solar system is that all planets lie in exactly the same ecliptic plane. While the planets very nearly do, slight variations in the tilt of each planet's orbit, as well as our own rotational axis tilt, makes it so that you can never look into the sky and see, say, Mars, and know that in an extraordinary circumstance, Mars would be blocking out Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune in the night sky when all the planets align in a straight line. At closest conjuncture, the planets would all be in roughly the same region of the sky, but they don't exactly overlap, which I know sounds disappointing because think of how awesome the consequences would be if the planets could totally align. Well, even if they could, it turns out that the effects on Earth would be negligible. At closest approach, Jupiter, the largest planet in the solar system, can only have a gravitational effect that is 1% of our moon on the Earth, because Jupiter is simply too far away. In fact, instead of causing our demise, Jupiter actually does a fantastic job of protecting life on Earth. Going off on a little bit of a tangent here, some scientists argue that Jupiter actually shields the Earth from a lot of outer solar system debris that could potentially crash into the Earth and wipe out all life. Way to go, Jupiter! But some other astronomers say that Jupiter's gravitational influence knocks some of the asteroids closer to the inner solar system, possibly into dangerous trajectories that could impact Earth. So maybe Jupiter isn't the hero we need. Nevertheless, it's physically impossible for the planets to align in such a way that would cause catastrophic consequences here on Earth. We're safe from the gravitational torment of other planets, at least for now. The most recent end of Earth prediction was in 2012, when the Mayan calendar was supposed to end and foretell the end of the world. Movies were made depicting the incoming disaster, end of the world parties were had, and many shenanigans ensued. But for those of you who don't know, the end of the Mayan calendar wasn't really the reason why some thought the world was going to end. Allegedly, according to some ancient Sumerians, they discovered a planet called Nibiru that was on a collision course with Earth and was supposed to crash sometime in 2003. But when nothing happened, the date was pushed back to 2012, which happened to be the year that ended one of the Mayan calendars on December 21st. So those who wanted people to freak out about the end of the world used this coincidental case as evidence that the world was going to end because the Mayans and the Sumerians predicted it. Luckily for us, nothing happened, but we all had a good laughing joke about the end of the world. If we want to talk about some real spooky collisions, here's some news. Andromeda, our nearest major galactic neighbor, is on a direct path to collide with the Milky Way. And what's worse, Andromeda is bigger than our own galaxy, so it's going to suck us in and crash and dance around and merge our galactic core with its own. But there's no need to worry. It's not going to happen for another 4 billion years. Did you know that the galaxy Andromeda already takes up about the size of your thumb held sideways at arm's length in the night sky? That's like 4 times bigger than our moon. It's just not quite as bright yet. As Andromeda gets closer and closer, it's going to create a fantastic show, eventually consuming the whole night sky in a wash of light. But when we collide, the likelihood of actual stars or planets impacting each other is so tiny that we can essentially say it just won't happen. There's too much empty space between stars for us to worry about that. So, even though the sun will probably have expanded and heated up to the point to make life on Earth unbearable, we can chill out by our swimming pools on Mars and watch the best star show in the galaxy. So, my point with this segment has not been to prove these people wrong or call them stupid for genuinely believing these apocalyptic events. I'm not here to be critical of others' beliefs. I think that these moments of terror become so popular for the same reason works of fiction based on a dystopian future are just eaten up by us humans. Like, there's this one series of books called Life as We Knew It, where the whole premise is that some asteroid was projected to hit the moon, and when it did, it impacted it just right to knock the moon significantly closer to Earth. Because of this, sea levels and volcanic activity skyrocketed, and the Earth was thrown into a perpetual winter as the sky was consumed with ash and other volcanic material blocking out the sun. The whole idea of this apocalyptic future is so enticing to me, because for whatever time that I'm reading this book, I'm not here anymore. I'm not worrying about that math quiz or grad school or what I'm going to cook for dinner. I'm transported to this world where the only thing that matters is survival, the most primitive instincts we can have as humans. And having the thought that the world can end at any moment should not instill a sense of despair into you. We all only have so long on this earth. We are reminded through these catastrophic stories and theories to have a passion for existence, to not simply move through the motions of everyday life. We must love with everything we have, pursue that which ignites a fire in our minds, and find what makes our hearts beat with every passing second. Maybe someday an ancient civilization will have correctly predicted our total annihilation. Until then, live with joy at the thrill of being human and being alive. Thanks for tuning in. Join us again next week for more Astro Chats.